I was standing at my 6-year-old son's funeral when my brother Robert grabbed the microphone and said the words that would destroy our family forever. The funeral home was packed with 300 people who claimed they loved Liam. They sat in neat rows wearing their expensive black suits and designer dresses, holding tissues they'd never need to use. My son's small white casket sat surrounded by lilies, his favorite stuffed dinosaur tucked beside him where no one could see it. I'd placed it there myself that morning, my hands shaking so badly the funeral director had to help me. Robert walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. My brother was 42 years old, built like our father with broad shoulders and hands that had shaken with every senator and judge in the state. He owned the largest construction company in 3 counties. He'd paid for this funeral, as he'd reminded me 6 times since Liam died. "Good riddance," Robert announced, his voice carrying through the funeral home's sound system. "This family didn't need more of her dirty bloodline." The words hit me like physical blows. I watched my parents, Harold and Joyce Whitmore, sitting in the front row in their reserved seats. My mother's pearl necklace caught the light as she nodded in agreement. My father placed his hand on her knee in solidarity. They were 70 and 68 years old, pillars of the community, and they were nodding along as their son spoke these poisonous words about their dead grandson. My sister Diane leaned toward her husband, Senator Blake Morrison's son, and whispered loud enough for our entire row to hear, "Some children are better off dead." I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the wooden pew so hard my knuckles went white. Beside me, my 11-year-old daughter Piper sat perfectly still, her tablet clutched against her chest. She hadn't spoken a word since we'd found Liam floating in our pool 3 days ago, but her eyes were alive with something I'd never seen before, something that should have warned everyone in that room that their day of reckoning had come. The funeral guests shifted in their seats. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. No one defended my baby boy who used to light up when he successfully used his iPad to tell me about his day. No one mentioned how he'd memorized every dinosaur name despite being nonverbal. No one talked about his beautiful smile or the way he'd flap his hands when he was happy. Robert continued from the podium, his voice gaining strength from the silent approval of the crowd. "My sister Vera has always been the family disappointment. First, she got pregnant at 23 by a man who wouldn't even stick around. Then she had another child by another failure of a man. And Liam, well, we all know what challenges he faced. Perhaps this is God's way of giving Vera a chance to start over, to finally make something of herself without the burden." Burden. He called my son a burden. That's when I noticed Piper's finger hovering over her tablet screen. She looked at me once, and in that look was a question and a promise. I didn't understand what she was asking, but I found myself nodding. Whatever my daughter was about to do, I trusted her completely. She stood up, all 4 feet 11 inches of her, wearing the black dress we'd bought together when we could barely see through our tears. Her voice was clear and carried across the funeral home with a strength that made everyone turn. Should I show everyone what Uncle Robert did to my little brother Liam? The funeral home went completely silent. 300 people stopped breathing at the same time. Robert's face drained of color behind the podium. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. My father started to stand, his face shifting from surprise to rage. "The videos are all here," Piper continued, holding up her tablet. "Every single thing he did. Every time he hurt him. Every threat he made. Every time he held my brother underwater while telling him it was swimming practice. Should I show them now, or would you prefer to continue talking about dirty bloodlines? Uncle Robert." The microphone in Robert's hand picked up the sound of his sharp intake of breath. Behind me, I heard someone whisper, "Dear God." Another person was already pulling out their phone. The funeral director stood frozen by the door, his hand on the handle, unsure whether to lock it or throw it open. My son couldn't speak in life, but in death, his silence was about to become the loudest sound in the room. And my daughter, my brave, brilliant daughter, was about to be his voice. 3 weeks before I stood in that funeral home watching my family reveal their true nature, life had followed its usual painful rhythm. I woke up every morning at 5:30 a.m. in the guest house on my parents' estate, a 2-bedroom cottage that sat exactly 500 feet from their mansion, close enough for them to monitor my every move, far enough to maintain their reputation when their society friends visited. The morning routine never varied. I'd make breakfast for Liam and Piper, help Liam with his morning exercises that his occupational therapist had recommended, and get both kids ready for school. Liam would always want to wear his dinosaur shirt, the green one with the T-Rex that had started to fade from too many washes. He'd point at it in his drawer and make his happy sound, a soft humming that meant everything was right in his world. "Mom, Liam's iPad needs charging," Piper said that particular morning, 3 weeks before everything ended. She was already dressed, her dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail she'd done herself. At 11, she was more responsible than most adults I knew. "I'll plug it in so it's ready when he gets home from school." Liam's iPad was his voice. Through an app called Speak For Me, he could tap pictures and words to communicate. He'd gotten so fast with it that his special education teacher, Mrs. Chen, said he was one of her most eloquent students. "Just because he communicates differently doesn't mean he has less to say," she'd told me at our last meeting. That morning, my mother Joyce arrived at 7:15 a.m., as she did every Tuesday and Thursday. She didn't knock anymore, just used her key and walked in like she owned the place. Technically, she did. "Vera, that boy's shirt is filthy," she announced, eyeing Liam's dinosaur shirt with disgust. "And why is his hair so long? He looks like a vagrant." "The shirt is clean, Mother. He just loves it so much it's wearing out, and he screams when anyone comes near him with scissors since Robert tried to cut it himself last month." My mother's face tightened. "Robert was trying to help. You're too permissive with that child. It's why he has such behavioral problems." "He's autistic, Mother, not badly behaved." "Same difference," she muttered, then louder. "Your father wants to discuss Liam's future this weekend. We've found a residential facility that specializes in children like him." "Children like him?" I kept my voice level, aware that both kids were listening. "You mean children who are loved and cared for at home?" "Don't be dramatic, Vera. You know what I mean. The Westbrook Institute comes highly recommended. Senator Morrison knows the director personally." "We're not having this conversation again. Liam stays with me." She left with her typical disappointed sigh, but not before slipping a $20 bill to Piper and completely ignoring Liam, who had waved goodbye from his spot on the couch. The truth about my family was simple and cruel. I'd gotten pregnant at 23 by Jake, a man I'd thought loved me until the pregnancy test showed positive. He'd left town the same night I told him, and I'd never heard from him again. My parents' solution had been to hide me in the guest house, tell their friends I was studying abroad, and then present Piper's birth as an unfortunate situation they were heroically managing. When I got pregnant again 5 years later, this time after a brief relationship with Marcus, who at least had the decency to send child support for 6 months before disappearing, my parents' disappointment transformed into something darker. But when Liam was diagnosed with autism at age 2, that darkness became complete rejection. Robert had seemed different at first. He'd visit the kids when I was at work, bringing toys and treats. The housekeeper, Maria, mentioned how patient he was with Liam. "Your brother spent 2 hours in the pool house with him yesterday," she'd told me one evening. "Teaching him swimming," he said. "Such a devoted uncle." But Liam had started changing whenever Robert was mentioned. He'd rock back and forth, his usual sign of distress. His iPad would suddenly display "no, no, no" repeatedly when Robert's car pulled into the driveway. I'd asked him once if Uncle Robert was nice to him, and he'd typed "hurts" on his iPad before deleting it quickly and running to his room. "Piper," I'd asked her 2 weeks before Liam died, "has Uncle Robert ever done anything that made you or Liam uncomfortable?" She'd looked at me with those serious eyes that belonged on someone much older. "He doesn't come near me anymore. Not since I told him I'd tell my teacher he smells like beer when he visits. But Mom, Liam can't tell teachers anything." That conversation haunts me now. The warning signs were all there, scattered like breadcrumbs through our daily life. Robert's insistence on being alone with Liam. The way Liam had gone from loving water to screaming at bath time. The bruises on his arms that Robert explained as, "The boy bruises easily, Vera. You know that." I'd installed a nanny cam in the main room without telling anyone, but Robert must have noticed because he stopped coming inside after that. Instead, he'd take Liam to the pool house, where my cameras couldn't reach. where my protection couldn't follow. The day everything changed started like any other. I was working my shift at the medical clinic where I'd been a receptionist for 6 years when my head began pounding. The migraine came on fast, the kind that makes the fluorescent lights feel like knives in your skull. My supervisor, Dr. Patterson, took one look at me and sent me home. "Vera, you're white as a sheet. Go rest. We can manage the afternoon without you." I drove home slowly, every streetlight making me wince. It was 1:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Liam had early dismissal from his special education program, and Robert had volunteered to pick him up. "Let me help, Vera," he'd said that morning. "You work too hard. I can spend some quality time with my nephew." The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway. Robert's Mercedes sat parked at an odd angle, like he'd been in a hurry. Maria's car was gone because Thursday was her half-day. I noticed the gate to the backyard was open, which was strange since I always kept it locked. Liam had developed a fascination with water recently, and even though Robert claimed he was teaching him to swim, something about Liam's reaction to pools lately made me nervous. I heard the splash before I saw anything. Then Liam's distinctive sound, not his happy hum but the high-pitched keen he made when he was terrified. I ran despite the migraine, my heels sliding on the grass. The pool house door was locked. Through the glass I could see Robert in the shallow end of the pool, holding Liam. My son was fighting, his thin arms flailing, his face going under the water. Robert would pull him up, say something I couldn't hear, then push him under again. "Robert!" I pounded on the door hard enough to bruise my hands. "Open this door right now!" He looked up, no surprise on his face, just mild annoyance. He lifted Liam out of the water and set him on the pool edge, where my son immediately scrambled away, coughing and sobbing. Robert walked to the door slowly, taking his time, adjusting his wet shirt. "Vera," he said calmly when he opened the door, "you're home early." I pushed past him to get to Liam. He was huddled in the corner, his dinosaur shirt soaked through, his iPad thrown across the room with a cracked screen. When I tried to hold him, he flinched away from me, something he'd never done before. "What were you doing to him?" "Teaching him water safety." He panicked. "You really should get him proper therapy, Vera. His fear of water is completely irrational." "He wasn't afraid of water until you started these swimming lessons." Robert's face hardened. "I'm trying to help. Dad's right. You coddle him too much. The boy needs to toughen up." "He's 6 years old and autistic, Robert. He doesn't need to toughen up. He needs to feel safe." "Safe?" Robert stepped closer, and I smelled chlorine and something else. Whiskey, maybe. "You think keeping him weak keeps him safe? The world's going to eat him alive, Vera. I'm doing him a favor. I'm doing you a favor." I gathered Liam in my arms, feeling him shake against me. "Don't come near him again." "Or what? You'll run to Mommy and Daddy? Who do you think asked me to work with him? They're tired of having a defective grandson. Hell, they're tired of having a disappointment for a daughter." That night, I changed all the locks. I called in sick the next day and kept both kids home from school. Liam wouldn't go near the bathroom, let alone take a bath. He typed "hurt water Uncle Bad" on Piper's tablet since his was broken, then deleted it immediately like he'd been trained to do. I bought security cameras for the pool area that weekend. I installed new locks on the gate. I thought I was protecting him. I thought I'd stopped whatever Robert had been doing. For 2 weeks, it seemed to work. Robert didn't come by. My parents were cold but distant. Liam slowly started using his communication app again, though he never talked about the pool house. He'd sleep in my bed every night, curled against me like he was trying to disappear. Then came the afternoon of March 15th. I'd been in the home office on a video call with my supervisor about taking some family leave time. Liam was in the backyard on his swing set, visible through the window. The call was important and ran long, maybe 15 minutes total. My boss was being understanding but needed documentation. Forms filled out, procedures followed. When I ended the call and looked outside, the swing was empty. The gate I'd triple-checked that morning stood wide open. I ran outside calling his name, even though I knew he wouldn't answer verbally. I found him in the pool. My baby boy was floating face down, still wearing his dinosaur shirt, his arms spread like he was trying to fly. The water was completely still around him. The new security camera was spray-painted black. The lock on the gate had been cut with bolt cutters that sat abandoned on the grass. I pulled him out, screamed for help, started CPR the way I'd learned years ago. Piper ran outside and saw everything. She stood frozen, holding her tablet, watching me try to breathe life back into her brother. Mrs. Anderson next door called 911, but we all knew it was too late. The paramedics said he'd been in the water for at least 20 minutes. The police said it looked like a tragic accident, that Liam must have figured out how to open the gate despite the locks. They barely glanced at the cut lock or painted camera. Robert arrived at the hospital before my parents, playing the concerned uncle perfectly. "Oh, Vera," he said loudly enough for the nurses to hear. "Accidents happen when mothers are negligent. You should have been watching him." The morning of the funeral, I woke up in Liam's bed. I'd been sleeping there since he died, surrounded by his stuffed dinosaurs and the faint smell of his apple shampoo. Piper stood in the doorway, already dressed in her black dress, holding both her tablet and Liam's iPad, which she'd somehow fixed. "Mom, we need to talk before we go." She sat beside me on the rocket ship sheets Liam had picked out last Christmas. Her face was composed, but her hands trembled slightly as she opened Liam's iPad. "I need you to trust me today, no matter what happens." "Piper, what are you talking about?" She navigated through Liam's apps with practiced ease, her fingers moving to a hidden folder buried 3 levels deep in his communication app. The folder was labeled with just one word: help. Liam was smarter than anyone knew, Mom. He figured out how to use the screen recording function on his iPad. Every time Uncle Robert took him to the pool house, he'd start recording before they went in. My heart stopped. What did he record? Piper opened the first file. The video was shaky, filmed from Liam's perspective as he held the iPad. Robert's voice was clear. "Your mom doesn't need to know about our special swimming lessons. If you tell her, I'll make sure you never see your sister again. Nod if you understand, you little retard." The video showed Liam nodding frantically, then Robert taking him to the pool. What happened next made me run to the bathroom and vomit. When I came back, Piper had closed that video and opened another folder on her own tablet. "There's more, Mom. I've been collecting evidence too. Remember when Uncle Robert stopped coming inside the house? He thought it was because of your nanny cam, but I'd told him I was recording everything on my tablet for a school project about family. He believed kids are too stupid to be threats." She showed me dozens of videos. Robert entering our house with his spare key when we weren't home. Robert going through my papers, photographing my bank statements. Robert on the phone in our backyard saying, "The boy's getting harder to control. Yeah, I know what Dad wants. It'll look like an accident." And Mom, this is the worst part. She pulled up our doorbell camera footage from the day Liam died. Uncle Robert deleted this from the cloud, but I'd already downloaded it to my tablet because I download everything after what he did to Liam's communication videos last month. The timestamp read 2:43 p.m. Robert walking up our front path with bolt cutters in one hand and a can of spray paint in the other. He looked directly at the camera, smiled, and waved like he was arriving for Sunday dinner. The next clip, 3:18 p.m., Robert leaving through the front door, checking his watch, his shirt partially wet. "I found Liam at 3:15, I whispered. "He killed my brother," Piper said, her voice steady but tears streaming down her face. "And everyone in our family knew he was hurting him. Look at this text thread I screenshots from Grandma's phone when she left it unlocked last week." The messages between my mother and Robert were damning. "The boy is becoming too much for Vera to handle. Your father thinks it's time for permanent solutions." Robert's response, "I'm working on it. These things have to look natural." I wanted to call the police immediately, but Piper grabbed my hand. "Mom, think about it. Chief Davidson plays golf with Grandpa every Sunday. Judge Wheeler is Uncle Robert's fraternity brother. The district attorney owes his career to Robert's campaign contributions. If we go to them now, the evidence will disappear, and so will we." Then what do? We let them hang themselves in public. Everyone will be at the funeral. All of Grandpa's business partners, all of Robert's construction company executives, the mayor, even some reporters, because Robert made sure to tell everyone how he's paying for his poor nephew's funeral. They can't make evidence disappear in front of 300 witnesses. She showed me how she'd prepared everything. The funeral home's AV system could connect to tablets for memorial slideshows. She'd already tested it during yesterday's viewing, telling the funeral director she wanted to make sure her brother's favorite songs would play properly. She'd uploaded everything to 3 different cloud services and scheduled emails to journalists at the state newspaper and 2 TV stations to send at exactly 2 p.m., right in the middle of the service. If they try to stop me, if they take my tablet, if anything happens, the truth still comes out, she explained. I also sent a package to Mrs. Chen, Liam's teacher. She's driving down from Boston today. She knows to call the FBI, not local police, if something goes wrong. I looked at my 11-year-old daughter, seeing her clearly for the first time. While I'd been drowning in grief, she'd been planning justice. While I'd been paralyzed by loss, she'd been preparing for war. How long have you been planning this? Since the night Liam died. He told me, Mom. Not with words, but 2 days before he died, he showed me the folder. He typed, "If water hurts me again, show everyone." He knew, Mom. Somehow, he knew what was coming. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her shake with suppressed sobs. "We're going to destroy them, aren't we?" "No, Mom. Liam is. We're just giving him his voice back." We drove to the funeral home in silence, Piper clutching her tablet like a weapon. I thought about all the times my family had called Liam broken, defective, a burden. They'd never understood that his silence didn't mean he wasn't listening, watching, recording. They'd never realized that my quiet daughter was keeping her own records, building her own case. As we pulled into the funeral home parking lot, I saw Robert's Mercedes in the reserved family spot. My parents' Bentley was already there, along with Diane's Range Rover. The entire Whitmore family assembled to mourn a child they'd despised, to perform grief they didn't feel. "Are you ready?" I asked Piper. She looked at the funeral home, then at her tablet showing Liam's folder marked "Help," then back at me. Liam couldn't speak, but he made sure he could testify. "Let's go make sure everyone hears him." Robert stood at the podium like he owned the room, which in a way he did. He'd paid for everything from the mahogany casket to the catered reception waiting in the next hall. His black Armani suit was perfectly tailored, his gold watch catching the light as he adjusted the microphone. Behind him, a screen showed rotating photos of Liam that my mother had selected, carefully curated to show only the images where you couldn't tell he was autistic. "We gather today to mourn a tragedy," Robert began, his voice carrying the practiced authority of a man used to commanding attention. "My nephew Liam was taken too soon, a victim of circumstances beyond anyone's control. But perhaps we should be honest about what those circumstances were." I felt my body tense. Beside me, Piper's finger moved to her tablet screen. "My sister Vera has always been the family disappointment," Robert continued, making eye contact with various guests as if sharing difficult truths. "First, she got pregnant at 23 by a man who wouldn't even stick around. Then another child by another failure of a man. And Liam, well, we all know what challenges he faced. Perhaps this is God's way of giving Vera a chance to start over, to finally make something of herself without the burden." A few people shifted uncomfortably, but many nodded. Mrs. Wellington, my mother's bridge partner, actually dabbed at her eyes as if Robert's words were touching rather than monstrous. "My nephew was a burden Vera couldn't handle. Perhaps God knew this family didn't need more of her dirty bloodline polluting our legacy. The boy could barely function. He couldn't even speak. What kind of life was that? What kind of future did he have?" That's when Diane leaned to her husband, her whisper intentionally loud. "Some children are better off dead. At least Vera can start fresh now." Piper stood up. The movement was so sudden, so decisive, that everyone turned. My 11-year-old daughter, small for her age but radiating an authority that made her seem 7 feet tall, held her tablet high. "Should I show everyone what Uncle Robert did to my little brother Liam?" Robert's face went from confident to confused to terrified in 3 seconds. "Sit down, child. This is not the time for your games." "Games?" Piper connected her tablet to the funeral home's display system with 3 quick taps. "Is that what you called it when you held him underwater? A game?" The first video started playing on the screen behind Robert. The image was shaky but clear. Robert in the pool house, holding Liam under the water. Liam's arms flailing. Robert pulling him up just as he started to go limp, laughing. "We're building your endurance, nephew. Your mother's too soft on you. 10 more seconds this time." Gasps echoed through the funeral home. Someone in the back row screamed. My mother stood up, her face white with shock. "This is fabricated. This is computer-generated." "It's date-stamped, Grandma," Piper said calmly, swiping to the next video. "February 3rd, 2:47 p.m. You were at your hair appointment. Mom was at work, and Uncle Robert was torturing my brother." The next video played. Robert in Liam's room at night, the nightlight casting shadows on his face. "If you tell anyone about our swimming lessons, I'll hurt your sister. You understand me, you little retard? Not if you understand." Liam's terrified breathing was audible through the speakers. The iPad camera caught him nodding frantically, tears streaming down his face. "Stop this immediately!" My father, Harold, stood up, his military bearing still intact at 70. "Robert, shut this down." But Piper was already playing the next file, a text message thread between my parents and Robert. My mother's message: "The boy is becoming a liability. The specialists are starting to ask questions about his bruises." Robert's reply: "I'm handling it. Trust me." Then came the doorbell footage, the timestamp large and clear. March 15th, 2:43 p.m. Robert walking up our front path with bolt cutters and spray paint. He looked directly at the camera, smiled, and waved. The next clip, 3:18 p.m. Robert leaving through the front door, checking his watch, his shirt partially wet, carrying Liam's favorite dinosaur toy. "I found Liam at 3:15, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. "Robert was in my house while I was on a work call. He cut the lock I'd installed. He painted over the camera I'd bought. He murdered my son." The funeral home erupted. People were standing, shouting, pulling out phones. Robert tried to lunge for Piper, but 3 men in the front row, fathers who'd brought their own children, blocked him. "There's more," Piper announced, her young voice cutting through the chaos. 63 videos total, 2 years of abuse. Should I play the one where Grandpa Harold tells Uncle Robert to fix the problem after Liam's autism diagnosis, or the one where he practices holding Liam underwater while timing it on his watch? Someone had already called 911. I could hear sirens in the distance. The funeral director had locked the doors. Whether to keep people in or out, I wasn't sure. Robert's voice cracked as he screamed. "That boy was defective. He was dragging this family down. I did everyone a favor." The confession hung in the air like poison. Someone was recording on their phone. Then another person. Soon dozens of phones were pointed at Robert as he continued his rant, unraveling completely. "My parents knew. They sanctioned this. Ask them about the Westbrook Institute. Ask them about the insurance policy they took out on Liam. $25,000. Ask them." My mother collapsed into her chair. My father tried to move toward the exit but found it blocked by Detective Morrison, who wasn't supposed to be there but whom Mrs. Chen had called from Boston with Piper's backup evidence. "Liam recorded everything," Piper said into the microphone Robert had abandoned. "He couldn't speak, but he found a way to tell the truth. He saved these videos in a folder labeled Help. He knew someone would find them. He knew I would find them." The screen behind her showed one last video. Liam, alone in his room, using his communication app to type a message, his little fingers moving carefully across the screen. "Uncle hurts me. Mommy doesn't know. Piper will help. Love you." The timestamp was 2 days before he died. The funeral home was silent except for the sound of my sobs and the police radios crackling as more units arrived. Robert stood frozen, surrounded by fathers who wouldn't let him move. My parents sat exposed, their lifetime of respectability shattered in minutes. And Piper stood at the podium where Robert had delivered his eulogy of hate, holding her tablet high, my son's voice finally heard. 6 months have passed since that funeral became a crime scene. Robert got 25 years without possibility of parole. The jury deliberated for only 40 minutes. They told us later that watching Liam's videos broke them completely. One juror, a father of 3, had to leave the courtroom during the playback. The prosecutor said it was the clearest case of premeditated murder he'd seen in 30 years of practice. My parents, Harold and Joyce Whitmore, were charged as accessories after the fact. The insurance policy they'd taken out on Liam without my knowledge, discovered during the investigation, proved their involvement. They got 5 years each and lost everything in the civil suit. Their mansion sold at auction last month. I heard they live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Florida now, avoided by everyone who once called them friends. My mother sends letters I don't open. Diane's husband divorced her the day after the funeral. Her "some children are better off dead" comment went viral after someone posted it online. She lost her job at the charity foundation where she'd worked, lost custody of her own children in the divorce, and last I heard, she was living with a cousin in Oregon who was the only family member still willing to speak to her. The pool house where Robert tortured my son was demolished. I couldn't bear to look at it. The money from the civil suit, nearly $3 million after the jury heard all 63 videos, went into the Liam Foundation. We provide iPads and communication devices to nonverbal children across the country now. Each device comes with a special feature that Piper helped design, a hidden recording function with encrypted cloud backup that only law enforcement can access with proper authorization. Parents can't delete it. Abusers can't hide it. In 6 months, we've distributed over 500 devices. 3 have already revealed abuse situations that led to arrests. Piper speaks at schools now, teaching kids about recognizing abuse and finding creative ways to seek help. She tells them about her brother who couldn't speak but found a way to testify. She shows them how technology can be a shield and a sword. At 11 years old, she's saved more children than most social workers do in a lifetime. She still carries her tablet everywhere, and she still has Liam's iPad, which she refuses to let anyone else touch. We moved to Colorado, far from the Whitmore name and its poison. Our house is small, but filled with light. Piper has friends who don't know our story. She's in therapy twice a week, working through the trauma of not just losing her brother, but of being the one who had to expose his murder. Some nights, she still wakes up screaming, remembering finding those videos, knowing what they meant. Mrs. Chen, Liam's special education teacher, visits us sometimes. She brought something on her last visit that destroyed and healed me simultaneously. It was a video from 2 weeks before Liam died, one she'd taken during class. Liam was using his iPad to give a presentation about dinosaurs. His electronic voice was clear and enthusiastic. T-Rex means king, but herbivores were kings too, different kinds of kings. Everyone can be important, so. The truth I've learned is harder than any jury verdict. Some families harbor monsters dressed as saviors. They smile at Sunday dinners while plotting destruction. They wear suits to funerals while celebrating their crimes. They call children burdens while being the heaviest weights dragging everyone into darkness. But I've also learned that the smallest voices find the biggest ways to speak. My 6-year-old son, who the world dismissed as defective, who my family wanted to erase, documented his abuse with the intelligence of someone 3 times his age. He knew he was in danger. He knew I couldn't see it, so he made sure someone would. He made sure Piper would. Liam couldn't speak, but his silence screamed the loudest truth of all. Last week, I got a call from a mother in Texas. Her nonverbal daughter had used one of our foundation's iPads to record her uncle touching her inappropriately. The police arrested him the same day. "Your son saved my daughter," she sobbed into the phone. "Liam saved her." Humpty. He saves children every day now. Every tablet we distribute carries his story. Every device we send out is a guardian angel with his name on it. My boy, who never spoke a word out loud, has become the voice for thousands of silent children. Robert was wrong about everything, but especially this. Liam wasn't a burden. He was a warrior. He fought alone in silence, recording evidence of his abuse, because he knew someday someone would listen. He turned his iPad, the device that gave him a voice in life, into the weapon that brought justice after death. Today would have been Liam's 7th birthday. Piper and I went to the beach he loved, the one where we scattered his ashes. We played his favorite dinosaur documentary on her tablet, the volume turned up high so his electronic voice could mix with the waves. We built sand castles shaped like T-Rexes and Triceratops. We wrote his name in the sand and watched the ocean carry it away, then write it again, refusing to let him be erased. He knew, didn't he? Piper asked as the sun set. He knew Uncle Robert would kill him. That's why he made sure I knew about the videos. Yeah, baby, he knew. He saved us, Mom. He saved me from becoming Uncle Robert's next target. He saved you from never knowing the truth. He saved all those kids who have our tablets now. She was right. My silent boy had orchestrated his own justice from beyond the grave. He'd turned his murder into the weapon that destroyed his killers. He'd transformed his suffering into the shield that protects other children. Some children, Diane had said, are better off dead. She was wrong. Some children are better at seeking justice than any adult could imagine. Some children, even silent ones, maybe especially silent ones, roar with truth so powerful it shakes foundations and topples dynasties. My son Liam was one of those children. He couldn't speak, but he made the whole world listen. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes to the silent battles some children face, please like this video and share it with others who need to hear it. Every share could help a parent recognize signs they're missing or encourage a child to find their own way to seek help. Comment below if you've seen the power of giving voice to the voiceless, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice, survival, and hope. Together we can make sure no child's silence goes unheard.